Minutes?
We did. They look good.
Looks good.
I make a motion that we accept the meeting, the Finance Committee meeting minutes from Thursday, May 6th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, where do we want to begin? So we better get some special area.
I got some stuff.
Begin at the beginning.
Okay,
Okay,
you can go first tonight.
this sheet.
That's
Um,
Come-
Revenue worksheet, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
the debt service override municipal kind of things. I would like, since it's excluded debt, I'd like to, in that spot, list every excluded debt thing we have, okay? And account number. So when you look at it, you know, everybody knows what we're talking about. We have a number like that, it's buried. And the number that shows there isn't right, okay?
Which,
It should be
uh,
177.
which row are we talking about, Ted?
Debt service override municipal.
Debt service
Okay,
override,
right.
municipal, okay.
Yeah,
175,057.
yeah, that's not right.
Okay.
It's 177,657, so I'm not sure. But it was the Ruggles roof and two common projects. 59, 1112, 59, 1110, 59, 1125. The other thing is, I have no idea what overlay is. Okay, I can't get my arms around it, and it's $70,000. What in the world is it?
Overlay
Yeah,
is money set aside to do abatements
Hmm.
on real estate.
For the assessors.
Property.
The assessors.
Okay.
That-
so when it's subtracted, it's subtracted from that number, right?
Yes, it's subtracted from, yes, it's subtracted from the money that we're going to collect for real estate and personal property.
Ah, okay,
Because the
gotcha.
entry is, the receivables is a debit to personal property, debit to the real estate, a
Hmm.
credit to overlay, and then the other half of the entry is deferred revenue. So that's the total that we're gonna collect.
Right.
Okay, all right, so the 70,000 is a good number that we showed
I'm
you?
not sure it's a good number.
Oh, okay,
It's kind of in line with what
Yeah,
has been.
but yeah,
okay,
history, yeah.
Whether it turns out to be a good number when we do the recap sheet or not, that's a different story.
Right.
yeah.
Because I actually think there's more that was put in there last year than 70,000.
Mhm.
But, there's 72.6 and 72
Yeah.
and whatever.
It's a good number to play with right now for what we're doing.
Okay, so if we just say 70 for the time being and put a little red mark like Dave used to do, or a red box,
Yeah,
or whatever
yeah,
you do,
just
saying
say it.
it's not,
Because you don't really know until you have
Right.
set the tax rate, what
Right.
it's going to be.
okay,
You know, it ends up being kind of like a plug-in number,
okay.
you
No,
know.
and
you're
that's
just throwing
fine.
out there,
Estimate.
but for our purposes, I would stick with what we have here for now.
Good, excellent. All right. Then we got the cherry sheet stuff. And there's a magic one in there called state assessments. And there's another one I'm not too sure of what that is.
That is, we pay assessments to the state, which they deduct directly from the money they give us, our state revenue.
Right?
They deduct so much for assessments. One of them is pollution control. One is for the senior center bus. One is
Right.
for, oh jeez,
Hmm.
what's the other one for? Oh, for the RMV to print the excise bills, surcharge, they call it an RMV renewal surcharge.
Hmm.
They pay us for that.
But is $1 a good number? We got $1 in there
That's
now.
just a
No, no.
placeholder, yeah.
Huh?
That's just a placeholder,
So that's not a good number either.
no.
No, that's not a good number.
So is the 20,000,
It's probably around 20,000.
20?
Or, yeah,
Yeah.
around, like, last year, so she has 2693, it's usually around that amount, so
Should we put 23 in red,
I wouldn't
or
even.
20,000?
I'd do 20,
20.
do 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it is in the proposed budget, it just didn't make it over to the revenue sheet. It's
Right.
right underneath the general insurance line. We have the RMD surcharge.
I know, I
here.
remember seeing that,
Okay.
right. Um,
Oh, yeah, R&B renewal surcharge.
Mhm.
Air pollution and regional transit, they're all right there.
Okay, good. And, next thing was the local receipts. And Gene, the stuff you sent looks
Where'd you
like
find that?
things are looking better,
They're looking much better.
right?
Yes, they are looking
First
much
sheet,
better.
second sheet.
Second sheet.
So,
'Cause
should-
we can,
should we put some new numbers in there?
General insurance.
yeah, because I figured we're up to like 1.2 million.
That's what I was thinking from that, you
Yeah.
saying what you said,
General,
yeah.
which one?
It's general,
And,
and then it's right here, these
Oh,
three.
okay.
I mean, like, that thing you sent us, there was an early voting number for 2,900,
Yeah,
investment, and that investment earnings for 16K. Is that a good number? Because we were using
no,
zero,
that interest number should go up,
better than 16.
yes. That's only through October.
Which October? Last October?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
what,
So,
Well, takes a while.
what would that be?
so that number should go up. See, last year we collected, the final number was 42,000.
Ooh,
If you look over on the last column on the right, actual FY '20.
oh, yeah,
So that number will go up. So these local receipts are gonna go up.
go up,
Because these
okay.
were only posted through today, and the collections on motor vehicles.
Yeah,
that's
just
only
started.
posted through April.
Right, I
30th.
noticed that.
So, so this number's gonna go up. Because we still have May and June to collect.
Okay, one of the things that I was thinking about, we have a box here called other department revenue. To me, that's a mystery. And I was wondering whether or not we should have the regional building commissioner, Hardwick Senior Center, the COA, formula grant, and early voting put in there, if that's what's in that box, just to keep in front of us what all these numbers are.
We should Jessica and I we'll have a good handle on the regional building, because she's working on the contract now with the other
Yeah,
towns.
okay,
So we're gonna have a number for that, probably by next week, huh, Jess?
good.
Yeah, I just met with the other towns today, and essentially, since the budget was level funded, I only added a 2% COLA to the building inspector's salary. I know it hasn't been approved yet, but just for assessment purposes, if the COLA doesn't get approved, their assessments will obviously go down, but the assessment for the towns really haven't changed much.
Okay, good.
And
Okay.
the Hardwick Senior Center, we should know that number too, because that's their formula grant.
Yeah.
Hardwick.
Yes.
So
Right.
we should be able to confirm that.
Okay, 'cause, you know, even for our working stuff, if what I was hoping is having blocks like this for working, do them like in the fall this year, and so we know a lot of stuff that has to get plugged in, and we can start ahead of game rather than scurrying at the end. So that would be good to open that up. And, yeah, like 1.2 million maybe, cherry sheet if we're lucky.
Well, it should work. Last year, we were even higher, so.
Yeah,
But like I said, we still have 2 months, May and June. Come in.
the thing is that, if we end up, quote, with our budget like cleared next week. How creative could some of these numbers be to show a budget that looks reasonable or more reasonable than a big hole in it? How can we, if, we're not gonna know the actual numbers, but it would be good to put, rather than lowball, I don't know, some reasonable number if possible. I don't really know what to say about that, but otherwise, I don't know how we're gonna be able to present it if we don't have some number that everyone's happy, like, this is a good number for the town meeting.
See, the hard thing is that COVID just happened, and we don't really, I mean, we're seeing that we're bouncing back on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
We really don't know what's gonna happen.
I know.
Even so. You know, I mean, look at the building permits are up and stuff, and it's like, but, you
How
know,
much?
babies not, people aren't gonna be building because they can't afford the lumber.
Right,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I see
So-
numbers
True.
You know,
Yeah, I know,
Things
that
are going
could
up
be,
so high.
Yeah, it's expensive.
You know, you just,
Right.
it's so hard to
Yeah.
determine what's gonna happen with everything, you know, coming off of COVID and,
Mm.
well, then maybe what we should do is just end up, whatever number we got Monday or so, that's the number we'll use. I don't know what else to do. To see how it's gonna come out.
Are you talking total, the total revenue? Or?
I'm talking when, we need to present a budget for the town meeting.
Okay.
That we think is the best budget we can come up with at that town meeting time. Even though, like Gene says, only the good Lord knows what's gonna really happen, okay? But we need to have that to present.
yeah, we need to have a balanced budget.
Yeah,
Jessica, do we have an idea of what our expenses are to the revenue, how close we are to it?
Yeah.
What are we off?
So, I mean, I don't think we're off
Okay.
at all. The general fund total, if you wanna include the COLA, is $11,898,033. And then, the revenue sheet that you all received last night, or this morning, whatever you wanna call it.
Yeah.
It was $12,245,687, and then since I received the revenue sheet from Jean today, I've plugged in some of the bigger numbers, and we're at $12,425,563. So,
For
I
revenue.
mean,
for
yeah.
revenue.
For revenue,
Yeah,
right, so the revenue is greater than the
Right.
expenditure.
Yeah,
Now that
Jess, where-
11,890, is that including the
Don't have that.
COLA?
Yep, the 11 million, so without COLA, it's $11,863,310. With the COLA, it's $11,898,033.
And COLA only affects certain employees?
Correct, so it
Hey,
reflects.
it's good.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
It affects all non-union employees, so the union employees, when they negotiate their contract, they build in a COLA every year. So without double dipping, they are not included in that. But on the sheet that I sent with the proposed budget, it will show you which accounts will get a COLA.
Yeah, I know, I saw that.
But the thing to keep in mind is also that we are still in the midst of contract negotiations with the police department. And then we have 4 non-union contracts to negotiate. We're gonna negotiate them on Monday, so,
Okay.
um,
Well, like the police chief mean or something?
police, fire,
Okay,
deputy chief, and myself,
okay.
so.
And that's for the 22?
Correct. Yep.
As far as the police go, is there any kind of deadline or anything on that, or what?
The deadline was,
Last
June
year, right?
30th, 2020,
Yeah,
Yeah.
So we have to, so this budget is built with an idea of what
okay.
the adjustment would have
Good,
been.
all right.
So there's gonna be retro that comes out of this year's budget,
Mm-hmm,
and then we are still estimating
Yeah.
what's gonna happen in
Okay.
the future. Which is why that budget was brought back up to level funded, because
Hmm,
our original efforts
Yep.
brought us to
lower number.
no success. So,
All right.
should not say too much. We were not very successful in our first effort, so.
Okey dokey.
On that additional funds, we have the indirect cost and the direct cost of the water and sewer. And I broke them out. I don't agree with that number.
Okay, you're
And I
talking back
agree
on
with the
revenue.
total, so that what I did was water transfer to general fund, health, dental, life, general insurance, county retirement, town services are the indirect costs.
What are we talking about here? What
Well,
sheet?
we're back on the revenues.
On additional funds, down there, you've got indirect cost water, okay? So we were given the water department budget sheet, all right?
Oh,
So for 22, it's $573,008, right? If you break out the indirect costs, okay, it doesn't equal what's on this sheet. Here it's 94,352 for water, it's really 97,178. So I don't know where that number comes from, but I went back to the sheets you gave me, Gene, and looked all of the accounts. So that would have to be, to me, changed, because when I put my numbers in, I end up with the same end number that you got. But one thing that, when we show the water budget, I think in the future, what I'd like to see is the two things separated. The indirect, it's their own, and that way, it keeps in our mind what's going on, we know what's gonna happen, and just make it easier than lump it all into one.
Right, okay.
But, would just, I think, make it easier to do that work.
Jessica, do we have confirmation on this water and sewer indirect cost, everything that they get?
I am gonna do some quick math right now, but I think Ted is right. The only thing I do need to update is gonna be the county retirement, because that jumped up a lot more than what we were expecting.
Well, I used the 13,250 that we had in that other sheet. I just,
Right.
thank you for that extra stuff, Gene. That put a little smile at the end of the day today.
Oh, that's. I need somebody's plan
It
today.
looked pretty grim this morning. That's all I got, I guess.
Yeah, we've got Alex on the Zoom meeting. He was gonna answer any questions anybody had.
oh.
I didn't write down the questions last meeting.
Hello.
Hi, Alex.
Hey, Alex.
I know that last meeting was about the tax title, so I had asked him about the tax title, and he was like, well, I'll just come on and talk to you guys
Okay.
about it, so.
Yeah,
I think that's right, that was one of the things.
I think there were a couple of other questions, but
Well, the other one,
I didn't get them written down. And they weren't in the minutes either, so I.
The tax title, we were included in the operating budget, or that was going on like a capital plan?
That's included in the general
In the
fund.
budget, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember, you asked a few questions.
Just so you know, the audio is a little choppy, so I can't exactly hear
Yeah,
that well.
I don't doubt it.
Is that tax, I'll ask a question, I guess. Is the tax title, Alex,
Yes.
is that a recurring charge every year, or is this like every few years?
Well, tax title should be done every year. Some of the expenses are coming from Barrington and Bloom, who handles cases that we have in land court. So depending on how far he goes with some cases, it can be a little more, but most of it comes from advertising and the fees at the I can't think of it, the fees at the Mass Land Records, at the Registry of Deeds. So depending on how many properties go into tax taking, it's $105 a piece. Depending on how many properties go to tax taking, the legal fees are more expensive. So the more people that are paid, the less that goes down, and the more that goes down, which is the plan, hopefully.
Alex, how many do you have that are in the tax title right now?
How many tax title accounts are currently in tax taking? That number I do not have right now, but I have my computer in front of me, I can go ahead and pull that out.
Now, do you have so many in payment plans or?
So the payment plans, the way I've always viewed payment plans, I try to tell people to avoid the payment plans for one main reason. Once you go out of it, then that means you basically, you already said that you couldn't do a payment plan. You tried to do it and you couldn't do it. So it kind of makes me not want to do another payment plan with you. The only way a payment plan would work is if we were to do an auction. If we were to do an auction, and then I would give the person the opportunity to do a payment plan to avoid that. And that's where the payment plan would come into. You wouldn't do a payment plan to avoid a tax taking. Do you understand? I can explain that better, or do you understand what I mean?
Maybe if you explain how
Yeah,
you go about
I get
doing
that.
the tax taking and that.
Well, so the first step is I would send a notice stating that I'm going to be advertising the properties that have outstanding taxes. Each resident would get one. And then shortly after the advertisement would happen, from there, I believe it is another 2 weeks from advertisement that the tax taking would be set up and going through, when you put everything through the tax taking. Now, the only thing that happens during a tax taking is it is not where people lose their property. It is nothing like that whatsoever. You go from a 14% interest rate on your outstanding taxes to a 16%. You also have a instrument of taking filed at the registry securing the town's ability to collect the liens on that property. That's where it's important to do, to secure the town's liens, because there's only so many years that you're able to do this. It's usually between 3.5 and 5, depending on the process, especially if there's a sale of the property. If somebody had outstanding taxes for 6, 7 years and there was a sale of the property, they potentially could get away with not paying those past due taxes. And that's why it's important to do tax takings on people's properties, to secure the town's rights to collect those taxes in those situations. You're not taking the property then and there. That is not what is happening. After the tax taking is secured, if somebody gets out of hand, if you see it going down so many years and they just cannot pay their taxes, that's where you have to think of other ways of, taking them to land court or going through one of those processes.
So now, you're asking for a $7,000 increase on the tax title line. This
That's
year,
correct. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
This
But I
year-
was not aware that it rolls over.
yeah, so this year there's only $1,800 spent.
The 10,000.
Is that 'cause of COVID?
Yes.
Well, new
So I am
people.
gonna adjust. I am gonna make an adjustment. I just became aware of that, and I'm going to make an adjustment now in my budget, because that should be sufficient.
The 10,000 will be sufficient?
So they've got 27,000.
What do you
The
need?
10,000, my whole plan was I wanted to have 17,000 total next year.
And I think,
If it's 18,000 next year, that's great. I don't need 27, I don't need 27,000.
okay, so because there's funds that are gonna roll over, right, approximately
Yes.
8,000 unused. Do you anticipate any more expenses on tax title this fiscal?
I do. I mean 18,000 was me putting it the highest, or the 17,000 that I was asking was gonna put me at the highest needed. And that was based off of the amounts that were past due at the time.
Okay.
So the more people that pay, the net goes down. That's the great part about it. Well, it goes down the more people that pay, and, that's less expensive. All these expenses do get attached to the parcels themselves also. So when somebody does pay off their tax title account, the town is reimbursed
So you,
all these expenses.
just to confirm, you think you'll be okay with the original 10,000 level funded budget?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, Alex, that money that you have left from 2021 will roll over to 2022.
That's what he just
I
said.
just asked Jean.
That's what he just said.
Well, that's why Dan asked
Yeah.
about level funding.
Yeah, because he's
That's
asking
right.
for another 7,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we just
Yeah.
confirmed.
Good. So that'll
And the only reason why that is that high, because it was not taken done this year. Usually it is done, September, September, October, when you had, the turnover, when I'm stepping in, it's stuff to do with tax taking, within a month of being somewhere. That'd be extremely difficult. So that is why that amount is left over, and there's never been, left over in the past.
So that'll give us another 7,000 on there then, right? Good.
I mean, the amount that I proposed last time of that number of 82 parcels has already gone down. I believe it's already down in the 50s.
Is that because of like a COVID thing? Is 50s a normal number, or is that a high number?
And yeah, I mean, for a population this size, I would say it's pretty high. It's all relative to the town. You can go to some towns and they do 2 a year. You can go to some towns and you're, up over 100. I would say with that many, I would say it's high right now. But once that letter goes out and people know that their name's gonna be advertised, it drops.
That's good.
I would imagine.
Right.
You would think. I mean, if it's possible. Some people, it's not possible.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Alex?
Well, the only memory I have, questions that I had asked was on reconciliation. Are we up to date on that all the time now, according to our guidelines?
With the guidelines,
Yeah. First of all, did we ever accept this financial policy manual?
The one that Ted called me about today?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was wondering that too. I'm not sure.
I mean, because on 7/19, we had a,
I just came across
You
it
saw that?
really recently myself.
okay,
The only financial policy that I had seen was from like 2016 maybe.
yeah,
And so I actually randomly came across our financial policy
Okay.
on the internet.
oh, really? Oh,
Yeah, because it was.
It's quite extensive.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
funded through the Community Compact
Exactly.
Initiative, so I would be shocked if it hasn't been accepted already, but I can.
Well, there's
look
been so
back.
much transition that I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
any chance of getting a
But,
copy?
yeah, let's work on
I
that.
did send you an email today with
Oh.
it.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I printed
I'm not
it
gonna
off.
print
It's
100
about
pages out.
pages.
Oh,
It's very
no.
long.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
It's about 100 pages.
Yeah.
So if we could get an answer on that, if it's been accepted, and then Alex and Jean and everybody else would be on the same page as far as how the reconciliations are supposed to work.
Definitely, yeah.
I am still playing catch up.
Okay,
But it's, it's going in the right direction.
good.
Now that I have two people there.
Good.
So I mean, I was talking to Jessica, today or yesterday, and I'm gonna push a little stronger, get it done. I mean, hopefully it should be all completed before, definitely before the end of the fiscal year. That'll happen. So
Okay,
I am pushing towards that.
all right.
But as for the guidelines, I would love to see them even if they're not accepted.
Yeah, Good.
I'll ask Jessica for those on Monday.
yeah, she'll get them out to you, I'm sure. Okay, thank you.
Good.
Sure. Is there any other questions?
Be good weekend reading.
Yeah, after you get done watching the finance committee meeting.
Yeah,
read the
watch
finance
that.
policy.
The follow-up, sure.
You could sit in the sun and read it.
What I would like to propose is, I know you guys have questions sometimes, and I'm not always at the meetings. If you guys can if there could be like a list of questions that you would like answered, for your meetings, maybe once a month. I know like some of you guys like to hear about the collections and where we're at. If there was a list comprised of numbers that you'd like to see once a month, if you guys would like to email me that list, and I can have that prepared for you guys.
Good. We'll work on that.
Okay,
Sounds good, Al.
work on a sheet.
I mean, because I hate coming in and you guys asking me, what's this number, what's that number, and I can't always get it for you.
Yeah.
If it was, if I had that and, beforehand, I could punch the numbers before I work and get them to you.
Okay,
That sounds good.
All right?
very good. I'm all set.
Very good.
My belief is that since the financial policy manual is published online through the state website, it was accepted.
Oh, it
by
was on the
town.
website? Yeah.
I'm looking, and it looks like back in August of 2019 it was accepted.
That sounds right, because the email I got was the 7th month of.
Yeah, that's probably when it was, the final edition of it was proposed.
Yeah.
And then it was accepted by the town in
So,
August.
we're gonna make sure that everybody involved has a copy of that. Because, I mean, this was produced because of the problems we've had. And, it's good thing to follow, I'd
And
say.
it's broken out into
Oh, everything.
departments.
100 pages, yeah, it's broken out. Okay, what's next?
It's even got forms in the back of it.
Our original financial policy had forms like the
Yeah.
payroll forms and
Right.
turnover sheets,
Mm.
standard forms. So
But they weren't enforced, or they weren't used, let's say.
that's something that our management letter still addresses, that turnover forms are not uniform. So,
Okay,
but every department has their reason why they use a different one, of course.
of course.
I'm shocked.
Now, what's everyone's feeling on the 2% COLA?
Well,
I thought the total was 35,000.
I think it's something that's gotta happen. I mean, inflation is on the rise, there's no doubt about that, I mean, and I'm sure the police are gonna get a contract, that says, so,
The DPW's union contract is also 2%.
Is
yeah.
it?
Is it?
For every year is
Well,
2% COLA. so-
That sounds fair, that's really, yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, you gotta
You
You step up because of it's hard to get good people.
You gotta
Yeah.
keep them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Getting them is one thing, keeping them is another.
yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, it's not a significant amount of money.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It would be nice if we,
have quite a few that are union, so we don't have any non-union.
Right, yeah.
It's mostly management, right? That's-
Town hall staff, library staff, town hall staff, and fire department, they're not union too. But they they've approached the town with the intent to unionize, but it's only a four people would be a part of that contract, so it really wouldn't be a significant
Mhm.
difference either.
And most associates are salary, or is it hourly, or it varies across the board?
It pretty much varies. Department heads are generally salary, and then, the assistants are typically hourly.
Okay.
I don't think there's any assistants that are salary, but I think, Jean, you're hourly, right? So, we have a couple of department heads that are hourly still.
Now, like the town clerk and all that, the salary, right?
Correct. Yep.
And how come you didn't get salary, Jean?
I came in hourly.
Did you?
When I started, I was hourly, yeah.
And because you're less than 40 hours, so it makes sense to do hourly in the event that some weeks. Yeah,
I've been 30 for quite a while. I came in at 20. Believe it or not. 25, and went up to 30.
That was a-
yeah,
This one, I'm 35.
That was a
Right.
I'm
quick.
still on the
So- yeah, so it makes sense because there's weeks where she'll need to do, additional work, which requires additional compensation. But typically, if somebody, like myself, is 40 hours, it wouldn't make sense for me to charge you guys for 60 hours of work actually.
So we can vote to include that,
Yeah. You need a motion for that?
yeah, for the 2% COLA. And then we'll use it in the budgets that we're going, and if something happens and we're way in the hole, then we'll have to take it away, but otherwise,
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be.
it looks like it should be okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion that, for this fiscal year, the COLA of 2% be added to the employees that are not in the union, is that right?
Non-contract, non-union.
Non-union.
Second. That was the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
That's one decision made. Now, I've got on the agenda on the public hearing. Have you got any ideas? Have the selectmen mentioned anything about the public hearing?
Well, with the new rules, we'll have it at the senior center, like we always do.
Are you limited to number?
Oh, I mean 100, but.
Yeah. We are gonna do that
Never happened.
I hope we get 100 people at town meeting, right?
Yeah.
You're probably likely to get.
anyway. We get like about 30.
At the public hearing, you get all the town hall employees, that's what
Yeah.
I've ever done.
Yeah.
Right, how many?
I think I counted last time there were like 6 people who had no
Right.
That's
tie,
The
Yeah.
government.
whether they were employees or board members. I
Yeah.
think there were about
Right.
6.
Wonderful.
But that was also the marijuana bylaw, so there were a few, like a few interested people.
Yeah.
Right.
Would we have to speak with that, the lady down at the senior center, if that can be used, or just like always?
Yeah.
I'm sure a Thursday evening is gonna be fine for us, but I can definitely just make sure it's on the calendar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just do it, see what happens.
usually have the town warrant books for them, so that they pick them up early.
Yeah.
If they come to the public hearing.
Yeah, the selectmen are finalizing the warrant, booklet on Monday the 24th, so that will definitely be all set.
Jessica, do you think that the printout for the, for the hearing will follow last year's, the way we did it last year?
The finance booklet?
Yeah, finance booklet, sorry.
So the one with the.
Yeah,
believe
if
that's-
that was for the hearing, yeah.
Yeah, we can, yeah, I can definitely match what was done last year. I know that it'll be different because Heather changed a lot of accounts last year, and
Oh,
she
wow.
really like detailed that in the booklet,
Yeah.
but we're not changing any accounts
Yeah.
this year, so it'll be pretty straightforward
Okay.
on what the accounts are, what the amount was last year, and what
Yeah.
we're looking for.
Okay. Sounds good.
A lot of people like that,
Yeah, I thought so, yeah.
that one. Do you have anything, updates on anything for us? That's new or exciting?
Well, I think that the most exciting thing is that we got our guidance for the ARPA funds. And I still think that the guidelines are pretty vague, which can be a good thing because I think we can literally use it on just about anything. So those will be planning discussions that the select board and I will have over the next couple of weeks on how we wanna approach using $816,000 this year and then $816,000 next year. But, I mean, I've already seen some crazy proposals where I'm like, I have no idea.
Did you order the marble already for the statues or what?
Yeah.
Oh, I
And
just
well,
wondered.
you know, that's the first thing that the
Oh,
chiefs
okay.
asked for was their marble statues of themselves, so. Actually, no, they prefer granite.
Granted, okay, well. Greek marble might be good.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're looking at a lot of different options.
So it's not as streamlined as just being like broadband, water or sewer?
Yeah, so they're still gonna come out with more refined guidance on the infrastructure piece of it. I guess that's gonna be kind of the most structured part of this, federal funding guidelines, but as far as the, you know, there's the opportunity to do premium pay, that covers all of the kind of public safety employees, back throughout COVID. And like I said, it can be used on just about anything. I mean, I've seen one city that proposed like upgrades to the facade of their police station. So, like, I mean, we're talking, and that city also had $28 million worth of funds, so I already said no to the police station.
Crazy, it's crazy.
I think that's the most exciting thing that I have. And we won't see that money, so the cities that are entitlement communities through the Community Development Block Grant, they will receive their funds as soon as this month. Every other community, which is a non-entitlement, which is the vast majority of communities, the state gets the allocation first, and then we will hear, once the state gets the allocation, they have 30 days to figure out how they want to distribute it to the communities. But the state cannot restrict the guidelines that the Treasury produced, so I think there was kind of some confusion on that back when the CARES Act came out. the states kind of manipulated the CARES Act guidance a little bit, and so they're not allowed to do that with this funding. So we do have the guidelines, but just how they're gonna distribute it and how they're gonna require towns and cities to report to the state is gonna be to be determined.
So I guess I have a couple questions maybe to
Yeah.
you guys.
Sure.
In regards to the budget, because I was trying to do some research. And, you know, the numbers look like that we're gonna have projected revenues higher than our projected budget. How does that work out with the budget? Like, where do those additional funds
Well,
go on the overage?
we don't. We don't go over, we go to reduce the tax rate if we can, right?
Yeah, when you do the tax rate, the recap sheet, it'll just be an excess of levy limit, so you have money sitting there, which the selectmen will have to acknowledge that they actually have it. So it just stays out, but you can always pick it up again the next year.
Right.
Mm.
And the town doesn't have a capital budget.
Not a dedicated,
Is there any thought? Because, I mean, if you look at our capital
Yeah,
plan,
yeah.
right? And I know we talked about maybe for the highway department having like, what do you call it, a stabilization fund for their capital expenses? Is it possible to have like a town-wide rather than it's department-specific?
We have a townwide stabilization.
A stabilization fund about for like capital projects?
Yes,
Is-
you can.
Yeah, we've had that good discussion.
We have a stabilization fund for anything you want.
I mean, my thought is, you know, we're coming in under budget. Free cash, like our budget seems to be more balanced. I mean, Gene sent me the last 4 years of budgets,
Mhm.
and free cash is coming down, right? So we went from 600,000
Oh,
to
yeah.
200,000. The budget seems to be more in line and more balanced than it has been before. But the town is kind of using the free cash to fund their capital expenses.
Right.
But we're not really planning ahead to fund those capital expenses, right?
Right.
And I feel like we may have an opportunity here where the revenues up front are higher. We're not gonna be increasing the tax rates to the residents. And we can now possibly put some money aside to fund, I mean, we saw the proposals from the highway department, the fire department. I mean, we got, some of these departments are using equipment that are 40 years old, and they're expensive pieces of equipment. We're talking $200,000 for a loader.
Yeah.
We're talking, you know, the chief's using a brush truck, you know, over at the fire department. Yeah, that's older than me. And these expenses are gonna come up
Really?
regardless, you know, and if the money's there now, why not try to like build a little bit of a fund up to prepare the town for those expenses rather than having to pay interest on them down the road, you know, with getting a bond or a loan or whatever? I just wanted to ask the thoughts on that.
First thing, we haven't discussed how we're paying for capital stuff. Where's the money for the chief's, fire chief's car and the police chief's car? I don't see
We don't
that
have
here.
enough free cash.
Okay,
right.
so there's things that this money, I don't know how that's gonna pay for yet, how we're gonna pay for that yet.
Well, I was going to recommend that, so within the capital requests, the fire chief had a couple of very small capital items.
Yeah.
In, like, car repairs and
Yeah.
a ladder.
Yeah, they didn't really qualify for capital.
And that's,
Right.
I think we should roll that into
Budget.
his operating budget this year as a, you know, a one-time expense.
I
because-
thought of that too, yeah.
Especially, you know, the car, yeah, those things were, just seemed kind of silly to me that they would be taken out of a different source of funding. Obviously, it's not gonna be enough to cover, what the deficit is between, you know, what's being asked and what we have available to us. But I think that, you know, those two things, we can definitely roll into his operating budget, so we don't have to have a separate article for them.
Right.
The free cash can be used elsewhere.
Yeah.
If you guys are amenable to that.
I thought when I saw the ladder,
Yeah.
I said,
Didn't we have guidelines for that capital? Wasn't it like $5,000 or more? I thought there was somewhere in the lost documents.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
but-
Yeah, that makes, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
ladder was like 3,500 or 5,500, and then the car repairs were like 3,200. So those things I think we can roll into his operating budget. And it's kind of like the CO2 sensor that he needs, that is gonna be covered by the state through the CCC, because he's using it because a marijuana facility has forced him to purchase it, so it will be covered by the state. But that was built into his operating budget. That's not something he's asking for separately to be funded. And that's about $8,000 to $10,000
Right.
in there. So there's just things like that where they're small enough to be able to fit into an operating budget.
Okay, but the thing is, I'm still nervous about his car and the police car. We've been doing that every year. We finally got them with cars that are decent, not breaking down. I
For
sure
free
wanna
cash.
make sure we can get that done this year.
well,
Well, I think the fire chief's vehicle is really important because it's been something that he's been trying to get. I
Oh, yeah.
think this is the third town meeting that he's
Yeah.
tried to get it on, and
Yeah.
it's a 2013, it's really like the best vehicle
Mhm.
they have right now, and it's falling apart,
Yeah.
so,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I
That's
do
one-
think that should be a priority for the committee.
where he had kind of bypassed it for two-town meeting. And I was,
He's
right.
I had said to him, "Rob,
So Jessica,
I'm
you,
gonna fight for you." Yeah.
are you gonna work out how we're gonna fund some of these, or on a
Yes.
sheet for us?
Yeah, I mean, we can, I guess it's gonna depend on what the select board and what the finance committee recommends, because we can't fund it all. And I
right.
mean, for a $200,000 request to come to us about 2
Yeah.
weeks ago,
Yeah, I know, yeah.
that's kind of
Hmm, yeah.
So,
Does anyone, do we know I mean, I guess it could be a question for the highway department, and I didn't think of it, but, like, so I know, like, the police department, they get the new cars every year. The fire department, they obviously need a chief vehicle, but they did they've got new equipment, new ambulance, new fire truck. Has the highway department received any new equipment?
Mostly trucks,
In the last few years?
they
mostly
get
trucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pickup trucks, but no heavy equipment.
No,
No.
I,
No,
I'd have to go back and look and see.
No.
They might not, but
not new anyway.
not
We got a
recent.
sweeper that was,
Is it used equipment.
Used,
That is
yeah.
new to us.
Now, I mean,
Yeah.
is that even, I mean, is that an option too? I was thinking, is like.
Yes.
Does a town of 5,000 people or so need a $200,000 brand new loader? If it's not gonna reduce the maintenance budget, reduce the fuel budget, if it's adding to the fleet and not replacing a piece of fleet of equipment. I think it was replacing a piece of fleet equipment, and you can show savings, the opportunity cost, where you're gonna have savings on fuel, you're gonna have savings, carbon emissions, you're gonna have savings on maintenance. That's great. But if it's just another piece of equipment, because then your maintenance budget goes up and your fuel budget goes up.
Yeah.
Right?
No, this was a replacement.
I think it was.
Yeah.
The
was
loader
sick.
replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old one was pretty sick, right. That's what I thought.
Yeah, the oldest of the old, yes.
Gee, what does it take, to set up like a capital stabilization to purchase, just specifically for like equipment?
Yeah, I think it took a majority, don't quote me, but I did talk to DOR, but I think it took a majority vote to set it up. And then it will take you, 2/3,
I wanna say it's
and no, it's
2/3.
like, it's more than half. to
Yeah,
get it out.
2/3 would be the
2/3,
next.
yeah, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
2/3 to get it out at a town meeting. So you still have to go to town meeting to use stabilization fund, you need 2/3 to get it out. And I'm almost positive it was a majority vote to set it up.
Mhm.
In terms of this money, are we gonna debt exclude that? Or you're saying if you have some quote left over, it goes into that?
You're not gonna debt exclude, you have to do ballot, you debt exclude.
That's what I'm saying, is that one of the things I thought that if for some large 200,000 thing, if we were, say that we're gonna buy this 200,000 thing in 3 years, and we're gonna debt exclude so much for 3 years, we get the money each year, we buy the thing, and that goes bye-bye, okay, in terms of the levy.
I'm almost wondering if Chapter 90 wouldn't pay for something like that.
Supposedly they didn't pay for
You can
vehicles.
do equipment through Chapter 90. I'd be curious to know,
We were told before that they didn't pay for vehicles, but,
big equipment, they do,
oh, okay,
like something like that.
Heavy equipment?
I'm almost positive.
okay.
You know, the thing is, we're never gonna have 200 grand left over in a year to buy him that thing, but he needs the thing, we gotta figure out a way to get him the thing.
That's what I was saying, rather than have this possible, $500,000 go away, we do,
Yeah.
and have it become an expense down the road that'll most likely have interest tacked onto it, essentially costing us more money. Because at some point, then it breaks down and it's no longer fixable and we're in an emergency situation. I mean, I can't imagine that the highway department can run without it's an essential piece of
I
equipment.
think that's what they load the sanding trucks.
Yeah.
Guess what, no sanding trucks, winter time's bad.
Mhm.
Well, they have two. One loads the sanding trucks, doesn't go on the highway, and the other one goes out about town.
Yeah, like
So-
trees come down, stuff like that.
Right, so, I mean, yeah, if one breaks, they could use the other one to fill the sand trucks.
Yeah,
But
it's,
that- yeah.
not to interrupt you, but,
No.
the Chapter 90 funds
Yep.
can be used for road building,
Oh.
machinery, equipment, and tools, so,
Okay.
So they could use Chapter 90.
Yeah.
It's chapter 90, that's, the select board handles that, right? That's on the chapter 90?
they have to approve, the expenditure of Chapter 90 funds, but it's kind of like a multi-step process because it has to go through the DPW commission, and then for some reason, it has to be approved at by the Board of Selectmen at a separate meeting, even though they are part of the Board of the
Yeah,
DPW commission. I don't know.
Redundant.
Approved by the state.
Yep. And then
Well,
approved.
So they
of
know
course,
they're
then it
doing it
becomes,
right.
do we need to load them more, or do we need a road fixed more? So, our roads are not in that tip-top of shape. I like your idea of doing a capital fund.
I mean,
That's the best idea.
I see I see the capital plan, and the research I've done, like, maybe not smaller towns like us, but a lot of, bigger municipalities, I
Mm.
can't say the word there, but, they have capital budgets.
Sure they do.
And they dedicate money solely, right?
Yep, I worked in Sturbridge for
Yeah.
13 years, and they were putting money away all the time for ambulances, every year. So when
Yeah.
it came to the time when they needed to get replaced one,
Sure.
they had most of the money to replace it without
Right.
even borrowing, so.
That-
Yeah, a lot of towns
I
do
like
that,
that
it's not a bad
idea.
idea.
Because
I like that idea,
Because-
Sam.
There is a
The way-
town website too, like,
Oh, no, let's go there.
oh no, there's a town website, I keep texting my husband, because he works for, Lincoln Sudbury School, and they sell, like, equipment, so
Oh.
they sell their,
Municipal.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you can, they can be selling, so I don't know how that would work, to bring in revenue towards these things too, or even because from what I understand, I wanna look it up myself to look and see if they have, but some of the stuff on there apparently isn't that old.
Yeah, we do,
Right.
sell stuff on Municipal. I don't know how much, I don't know if we've ever purchased anything from Municipal, because usually a lot of that stuff, at least for like a smaller town like Barre, it's prime time. But, so usually a lot of times people will go on Municipal to, for example, like we just sold a police cruiser on Municipal, because we knew, given whatever engine it had, it would get us more through an auction site than it would if we were just to trade in the vehicle. And so we were able to get a better deal out on that.
So where does that money go to?
Yeah, that's a question, we haven't figured that out.
That's
yet.
a very recent
When you sell-
discussion.
Well, it is, because usually when you sell any kind of town asset, it goes into the general fund
Right.
and just, rolls in with everything else.
Yeah.
But usually when you purchase a new vehicle, usually trade in the one you're getting rid of, lowers the price, and then he still has all the money to equip it,
Mhm.
with the budget money. But this is a different thing.
Yeah.
I don't, I'm thinking there's probably, I'm almost thinking we've done it before with the ambulance or something in the fire department,
Okay.
where they ended up selling it because they needed the money to sell it,
Right.
but I can't remember what we did, so I've got to call into the DOR, so we'll figure it out, but,
Because
yeah.
there's a lot of vehicles that have parts that are very desirable right now, and it also makes me
Yeah.
wonder if buying vehicles right now is necessarily.
Well,
I don't know much about cars, but I just know that like things, everything is going up, like right now, will go back down.
but it's not ever gonna go down.
That's the problem.
Yeah, right. They're not gonna be like, yeah, like lumber prices.
Yeah.
Well, they
I don't know if that's ever gonna go
Lumber,
down.
Steel.
Yeah, that's the other thing though,
insulation.
I mean, a $200,000 loader this year could be
Yes.
$250 next year.
Right,
It's
right.
like-
It could be $150 next year, but
Right.
it's
Mm.
most likely gonna be $250.
That's-
You know, I mean, inflation,
And hopefully they don't need any computer chips.
Well, I was just gonna say, that's why the car market is crazy right
Yeah.
now, because computer chips are like the last thing on the assembly line that anybody cares about. And so if you want a new car, that's one of the pieces that prevent a new car from rolling off the assembly line. And so that's why, you know, you might hear a call from your favorite local dealership app offering you some big bucks for your used vehicle.
oh yeah. I get an email almost weekly.
I know, me, yeah. Oh, trust me, I'm like, you know, that's not a bad offer. Yeah.
If it wasn't almost paid off.
I know.
Yeah. I already had one of those, I have a 20, and they've already been, 6 months ago, they've been trying to grab my car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, go away.
What are you supposed to
But you could
buy?
have a 21.
Right,
And I'm like, I
exactly.
don't want a 21.
Yeah.
I'm just fine with my 20.
Yeah, I know somebody, not to get too off topic, but I know somebody who bought a 19 and was offered the same price that
They
they
paid for it.
bought it for
Yeah.
in 19.
Yeah.
I've
Yep.
done that
Same
too.
price. I'm like,
It's crazy.
I would probably say yes. Certainly would.
I mean, I guess
Hmm.
that would be interesting to see what that.
Then if we have extra money this year, then maybe that's what we should do with it, Dan. So,
It's an i-
we gotta do something, because
It's an idea. I mean, because free cash is going down, and the way my mentality works is, if I want to go out and buy a new car, right? I don't hope that I spend less on all my other budgets, right, in my house, right? And I don't hope I'm like, oh man, I hope my oil bill goes down by $20, and I budgeted $40 for it. And then after the end, like, that's really what free cash is, right? It's money that's been budgeted for a particular thing
Mhm.
that wasn't used.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like the more balanced the budget becomes, the less likely you're gonna have the free cash, but we still have to allocate funds
True.
to these expenses. And, I mean, it's just an idea, because in my head, that makes more sense if there's an overage on revenue up front and it's below our budget. We're not impacting the taxes, we're not asking the taxes to go up. We're just asking the taxes to kind of be maintained.
Right, because your taxes are only going up 2.5%. That's all you can do by state law.
Yeah, the override, unless it's an override, if there's that's like a
Unless
big,
it's-
that's like a big
unless
expense,
it's override,
you know?
Yeah.
But they're only gonna go up 2.5%, so you're gonna have excess levy capacity, which means you can still add that much more to your budget.
Right.
And your tax rate's not really gonna, it's only going up 2.5%.
Yeah, 2.5% adds up after a couple
Oh,
of years.
yeah.
Well,
doubt
it's
it.
going up, it always goes up, so
Yeah.
it never comes down.
Never.
oh, but then if we had, that would be a line in the budget then.
Is it aligned in, so what, is it aligned in the budget, or is it own, if like a capital budget, is that its own budget, or a capital stabilization? How would that be
That's what I
defined?
asked you.
Oh,
Would
when
it
we
be a
started
general ledger line item?
for stabilization,
No, for capital purchases.
you'd have to specify, you do have to do articles, but you'd have to specify what you're buying.
So then you'd have those articles like we've got for the bridges and the sidewalks.
Yep.
You can't add to an article that's already there.
Why would you want to? Because you want to keep them separate, because you want them along, they're on the book.
You know?
Yeah,
So you don't want to start adding to stuff, because then you get this explosion, you don't know where.
Now, could
So you'd
we-
have to say the amount that you put in there,
So you
you'd
do an
have to
article that
specify.
you're gonna purchase a loader for whatever amount of money, another article for a police cruiser, or another article
That's what we do now, though, right?
for.
Yeah.
Yes, we do, yeah.
And so, when you were in Sturbridge, how did they work it over in Sturbridge?
But they did articles for purchases.
But did they have a
They have-
capital budget as well?
They did have a capital budget.
Yeah, so it was just gonna,
Separate.
instead of saying, you know, a loader from free cash, it would say a loader from the capital stabilization fund.
Right, when you went to use it, yeah.
So the capital stabilization fund and the capital budget, those are the same things, just two different terms that are used, essentially.
But are you asking that if we create a capital stabilization fund, how do you transfer money
Right,
from this
right.
year's free cash or this year's budget
I think-
overage into that
We had an
fund?
article.
I think that's the
We had
question.
an article to transfer from the general fund,
Okay,
because if you're only talking about general fund, to a capital, so much money to this capital stabilization.
Right.
right,
Right.
And that would be a yearly, at town meeting, it should be a yearly thing.
Hopefully, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah,
Fingers
well, yeah,
crossed.
hopefully,
Yeah,
that's
you
what,
hope
that
you
would
continue
be
your
your intent.
Yeah.
You'd have to specify the amount you're putting in.
Oh, yeah.
And
And then you'd have to tell them how many years that you expect it to take to get to your 200,000.
Correct. Because we can't, if there's the overage, right, the $500,000 possible, right, that we're looking at, we can't pre-spend that money. You can't allocate those funds for
When you're talking.
expenses.
Yeah, that's part of your budget. At this point, if you have, you're building up to your revenue, so
Mhm.
whatever your expenses are, the difference is you can still spend that money up to your revenue so that you have a balanced budget.
This year.
So
This
we-
year.
We can't, can we put within our article, we can't just put like a police, fire chief's vehicle into the operating budget, can we?
We don't need to put it, we just do an article.
but you're taking from the general fund as opposed from free cash.
We're all talking, yeah, I wouldn't touch your free cash, there's not nothing there.
Mhm.
I mean, if you do and spend all that, you might end up with nothing, and you could have negative free cash too, so. I mean, you don't know what's gonna happen.
Right.
But I don't know that our free cash is gonna stay that low again, because it built right up again. It
Well-
just depends on what happens.
I think, so at the special town meeting, we had to offset the budget with,
Yeah.
yeah, so we had to use free cash to offset the budget,
Yeah.
but we
We had to-
recouped that,
Well, it looks like we're starting to recoup it, yeah.
right?
Yeah, because we had to use free cash for the snow and ice deficit.
Yep.
Because there was a conflict with when we had our meetings. And, we were short like $81,000 in our estimated receipts last year.
Yeah.
So we had to balance our budget. We had to boost our budget to get to we had such low estimated receipts, because we could, from that last year, we couldn't fund this year's budget. So, anyway,
That's the other
I
thing.
think
that-
free cash will eventually start climbing back up again. I mean, it depends on, like, if you go with estimated receipts, now, if we put in a low number of estimated receipts and we end up with a lot more money bringing in, things pick up and the building permits go up and everything else goes up, that difference is gonna be part of free cash.
Mhm.
Then also our budget, whatever we don't spend, that also becomes part of free cash.
Well, yeah, that kind of makes my
So-
point, though.
That kind of, that kind of,
You're kind of hoping that your revenues are higher, and you're not really planning for those
Yeah.
expenses. You're just hoping that a particular department doesn't spend as much, or another department earns
Right.
more than was on paper
which is why
originally.
you plan it and you put it in your budget.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, so, exactly, so if we don't do something with this overage before the budget starts, like create a capital stabilization fund or anything, it's gonna reduce the tax limit, and we're gonna be back to working solely off of free cash that becomes available.
Yeah, because you can't guarantee you're gonna have excess levy capacity every year, I mean, or how much
No.
it's gonna be.
No,
Because
of
the 5-year capital plan, there's some significant.
course there is, yeah.
I-
pieces
$1
there,
fire
right?
I do think though, as a caveat, that some of those are gonna be addressed with the ARPA funds.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
obviously, it's 1.6 million, so we're not buying a fire station with it,
Yeah,
which is.
that's gonna be,
Yeah.
that's gonna be an override piece.
Yeah, so, but there are some things like where, I mean, my plan will probably look a little bit different than the select board's plan, that'll look different from somebody else's plan, but, where I'm kind of looking at some numbers, I'm definitely looking at the capital plan and seeing, because we don't wanna create like, you know, for example, we don't wanna create a new position, or we don't wanna have to offset the budget if we don't have to. because then we could create a cliff for ourselves where after 2024, we have to own the costs that we offset using a one-time revenue.
Right.
So the idea is to use this money to take care of one-time costs.
Yeah, to like invest in the.
Yeah.
And to invest in the assets we have.
Yeah.
It will, and not have to get a loan and pay interest on it. And
Exactly, yeah.
It's always better to pay with money in your pocket than asking the bank to borrow.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
gonna save, in the grand scheme of things, it saves all the residents a little bit of taxes down the road.
Right, because these things, you know, and it also just saves like, you know, for example, one of the projects that I'm thinking about is these windows in this building need to be replaced. That is a project that will get kicked down the road, because there's other things, like a new ambulance or a new fire truck or whatever, that's gonna come up and take precedence over old creaky windows that don't open. And so, but there's like an example of where we can use this fund to address an issue that will most likely get kicked down the road if we don't.
Oh,
That would
exactly.
be a long-term investment in this building, because it would help with heat, would help with electricity, would help, I mean.
That's
it would help-
opportunity.
Yeah,
cost,
you know,
It would
you-
be,
you don't-
yeah,
It's an investment in the building for the future.
You
Right.
spend money to save money type of thing, because
Right.
I don't think those windows are meeting any sort of energy efficiency.
oh no.
No.
And it gets, when it gets hot and you wanna open the window and it doesn't
Can't
open,
open.
you can't, yeah, some of the windows don't open, and then, you know, the other thing that I was thinking about is putting the HVAC units in all of our offices, which again, we have a lot of troubles with heating in this building. So having an HVAC unit that would be able to heat our offices would keep our employees comfortable during different weather events, and also the air conditioning too. Instead of having our custodian install window units every year, which will get old and probably stop working at some point, they're loud and whatever. You know, but those are things where it's on our capital plan, but there's a very high likelihood that they're gonna get kicked down the road because of more important, things that break, or, for public safety reasons, we need them, so it's like, that's kind of where my head is at. We'll see where everybody else is.
So, after that whole dance, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna put in some kind of a line item or something for this year, for X number of dollars for this equipment?
I think we have to like
How do we,
vote to create a capital stabilization fund, so that's gonna go to town meeting, right?
but if we have to say what it's for, okay, if that's what happens, Dean, as opposed to just anything, we'd have, make sure we have to do that for what, like on a department basis?
Well, you have a capital plan, so at town meeting, you can just put it in the book, that this is what's in our capital plan. This is what we
Okay.
spend all the time, you know, we buy a police cruiser every year, we buy, you know, whatever every year. We bought, last few years, we bought ambulances, we bought, you know, so you can just kind of
Okay,
describe it in some kind of a table within that article, just in the book,
okay,
you know, and say, so it would cover all kinds of capital purchases.
and then how much money we'd have in a year, then Dan, we could say, well, we
And
think
then
this
put an
year,
amount of money
we're
in.
gonna put that much in, right?
Right.
And do that as an article. That sounds good to me.
And, you know, all things being positive, it's a fund you could hopefully keep rolling, kind of like
Absolutely.
the regular stabilization funds.
Yeah.
And hopefully offset, like, and then maybe offset the free, and not have to count on the free cash, I should say, as the
Right.
sole source of funding for some of these bigger projects.
Right, well, I think it's a good idea, I'd like to do that. So that we'd have to have an article written for that, then.
Now, Jean, it's not possible, or is it, on your highway department, that they just have a regular line item for equipment that will roll over each year?
Has to be an article. Has
Yeah,
to be
how
really-
come the tax title one rolls over?
Because it's a special mass general law that applies to it.
Okay. 'Cause I thought that
Articles
would-
can roll, budget items don't tend to deductible, they can only be encumbered, which means at the end of the fiscal year, if you have outstanding bills, like you're waiting for something to come in, and it didn't come in, but we still have to pay the bill, you can encumber the money from your budget, and then that amount will roll into the new year. But articles, like I said, if the, who's ever in charge of it, if they're not done with it, then it just rolls.
And it can get lost, as we've seen, some of
Yes.
those older, they just
right.
sit there.
Yeah.
That way, it's not a slush fund. Slush
Yeah.
funds,
The article's very specific, though, if you have.
right,
if you-
exactly, that's why I like that.
If you vote an article for a fire truck, it has to go to the fire truck, but if you have a capital budget fund,
Right.
it could be the fire truck, it could be the highway department equipment.
Yes.
But if you make it specific to a department, you gotta
Yeah.
spend it within that department.
You know?
So you see, I don't like that, I'd rather see it specific to the town.
I agree.
That
Right,
way,
I agree with
that way
that,
it can be
yeah.
voted upon,
Yep.
say, hey, you know, the building needs new windows, we got this $100,000 here that we saved up.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, you know, more important at this current year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's fund it, let's fund the windows type
Oh,
of thing.
I like that
Yeah,
idea.
sounds good.
That makes sense.
Yep, good.
So Ted, you've got to get somebody to write an article for you.
Yeah, I'll look at that 100-page book and it'll explain how to write it.
No, I don't. Not that one.
I mean, I'll try, I can try to help you out.
Yeah, oh, no, that's what I'd like to do. We'll have to talk with Gene, make sure that,
Is it complex,
The money-
article?
Usually we send it to the attorney.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, right.
But this is gonna have a table with a bunch of possible options in it, or things that we're considering?
Yeah, I
You probably
mean,
just word it to the
as a
capital plan.
suggestion, I would word it as just a capital project, but I would somehow put in the book that, you know, could be used on any kind of capital purchase such as, or something like that, Jess. So that it's kind of encumbered, everything's counted into it, but, you're not at this point, to give them an idea what you're gonna spend.
But then when you
A
go to
bigger
use,
article.
when you go to
Put a
use,
dollar amount.
Well, you're gonna have to put a dollar amount to originally fund
Yeah.
the stabilization fund, and a dollar amount every year to put money into
right.
it.
We'll have to
Yeah.
figure that out.
I thought the article every year then,
Yeah, it
You're
would
right.
just be an ongoing, yeah, you put that same article on
every year for how much
Put
you
them
put
out.
for.
and then when you wanna spend the money, then you have to have a town meeting, a town vote,
Yeah, you'd have an article again.
and you have to get
to use that
2/3.
money to purchase, and you'd have
I
to be
think so.
2/3.
Makes sense.
I think that's it.
But the money,
Sounds
was
good.
same thing as like free
It's a good
cash, but
idea.
you're putting the money like into a savings account.
Right,
Yep,
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's kind of more safe that way, because it's not gonna fluctuate with whatever happens in the town. The
Right.
revenues or the expense, whatever,
Yeah.
it's just gonna be there.
And you don't have to fund it if the town's in a.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to fund it.
Right.
Kind of like our regular stabilization fund.
Yeah.
And the regular stabilization fund does have money in it. I mean, is that like a significant sum for our size town, or is it average? Or is it 720?
It's not bad, and we're only
2%?
allowed,
2% of the budget, is that what it's supposed to be?
2% of the, yeah, 2%
Yeah.
of the.
Well,
Some number, yeah.
yeah, there is a
No money
formula,
we could spend out of there, I think.
We
Right.
can, you
About
can spend that on
100,000 or
anything.
something.
right,
It's
So-
about 700.
720-ish.
Yeah, it was on the
Yeah.
one of these reports, yeah.
Yeah, so the stabilization, there is a formula to it
Mm.
where you can't go above. So the state does put a cap, because then you start getting into the rainy day, like,
Yeah.
how much of the
The slush
town
fund.
keeping from us, right? So that's a formula that I have since forgotten, but I think it's 5%.
5%, okay.
Well, and we earn.
Could be.
Interest, is it a significant amount of interest off of that fund, or? Interest rates
Yeah,
are
better
lower right now.
because it's with all the trust funds, all the trust funds are in one Bartholomew.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, it gets pretty good interest over there.
right.
It's 5%, we might have too much in there, then, if you're saying there's 700,000.
Well, what's good about that, Dan, is
Well, that's-
if you have your capital plan or something,
Maybe it's a little bit more.
You can
I know we're
use
not
that other
at the
stuff.
limit, but we're.
rainy day fund for anything
We're
if
doing
you
it,
had
yeah,
a real
we're not-
problem.
Oh, exactly.
So that's what's
Yeah.
nice.
Exactly. I mean, I was just curious, because I saw the budgets I went through, like, I saw we put money, I believe in even last town meeting, did we put money into stabilization, or the one prior possibly?
It must have been the one
You
prior.
put 100,000 into a special
The cable.
fund, right,
And I mean, that's something, that's a whole nother discussion on
It sure
that.
is.
You know, because if they get the ARPA funds, I mean, that could be, do they need that 100,000? You know, but anyways, like, I haven't seen anything come out of Staples. Like, does the town use it, or are we just like hanging on to it?
Oh, we've
And
used
they
it.
used it for a while.
Mm.
Yeah, but we haven't, for a while, we did use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been a while.
Yeah,
I mean, if.
Time
we
goes
get
by
some
fast.
We just
people-
put little amounts into it every once in a while.
I mean, I just say, like, if we have, like the fire chief's in desperate need of a new vehicle, we got $700,000 sitting in there.
Well, that was the recommendation at the special
That's the
town meeting.
recommendation I
Right.
made to him at
Yeah.
the special town
It's a little
meeting.
bit of a sore subject.
I was kind of new to that, so I'm getting a little bit into it now, you know what I
We need
mean?
it
That's good.
desperately. And it's one of those things where you place the order now, you need to have
Yeah.
the money authorized, but you're not gonna get the car. I mean, we're still waiting on the police chief car that we ordered
Mhm.
last July.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, it takes time for these vehicles to get to us, so it's
Mhm.
not like you vote on it and you spend it the next
Right.
day without knowing what
Yeah,
other
because COVID
revenues.
had stopped all those car dealers from making cars, they were making,
Air purifiers or
Respirators.
Yeah.
respirators, yeah.
for the
So,
hospital, so, yeah, so.
yeah, so it's not, like, there's time in between when you authorize, so you're basically authorizing the expectation that you'll have enough money in, when that time comes due. You know, that's how we could have approached it, is that we expect that this time next year, we're not gonna be in a total hole.
Yeah.
So, but, I don't know. I don't live in the town, so I don't make the decisions.
Yeah, we had 110,000 available to spend in the stabilization without going below the minimum the state wants you to keep in there.
Okay.
That was last year,
Okay.
so,
Oh, so there's-
yeah,
there's
you're
a-
right.
there's
If you had a
ceiling
big,
and-
cra-
There's a
what?
ceiling and a floor on the stabilization fund.
Not necessarily
No,
a
they want
floor.
5% of your budget.
Is that cap? Is that the ceiling?
No, that's what they want is the minimum.
Minimum.
Okay.
The cap I'm looking at right now is, well, it says if the amount exceeds 15% of the budgeted revenues, you'll basically get audited by the
Yeah,
comptroller.
well,
Yeah, well,
So,
we won't have that
I don't
problem.
think.
No, we
won't get
don't lose any sleep on that one.
We'll spend it before then.
Yeah, yeah.
Jessica will say, hey,
50.
we're getting close to
5%.
spend some money.
I'm sorry, we have to spend some money.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, I had put on here that we were doing a meeting with the selectmen about the budget and capital items, you know, how they feel about things. And was gonna have them come to the meeting next week. They wanted us to come to their meeting Monday night,
This coming Monday?
yeah. But they've got a lot on the agenda, I was looking at it.
Well, I talked to Greg and he said he talked to you and agreed to do next Thursday.
Oh, he hasn't answered me yet.
Oh. Well,
Okay,
maybe-
well, that's good, because then we'll be just.
The
Well,
phone
'cause he
don't
called-
ring, you
he
know it's
called
great.
me.
Well, that's good.
Oh, yeah, just based off of the conversation I had, he said that he was okay for them to come to next Thursday, so
Okay.
I figured.
That's good, because then it'll be just us with them, and we can
So,
kind of hash everything out.
so we have some of these updated numbers, whatever,
Yeah.
for next time. And then we'll have
And
a
see
better
what-
story to talk to them about.
Yeah, and
Good.
see what the budgets come in at, and what the articles are,
Yeah,
and what they're thinking about for capital, like Rob's car, the police car.
And I know it was brought up when I was a little bit, a few months ago when I was newer to this, but does the town have a capital committee? Is it something that's been this big?
We had one, but we don't meet.
Yeah, there was one, I don't think.
I
it
think I
was-
went to 3 meetings.
Yeah, it's never been formally disbanded, but I think
Right.
that the last time it met was probably 2018,
Yeah, somewhere in there.
2019.
Is it just lack of volunteers type of thing, or?
That was before my time.
Well, lack of funds to fund it, I think, is more than anything else.
Lack of money.
Yeah.
No money, no fun.
So,
So then that'll be our meeting next Thursday, will be
Good, sounds good.
the budget and capital articles on the warrant.
Now, when are the articles closed? We have to write that by when?
The 20th. So we have, well, I mean, the warrant closes on the 20th. So if the actual writing of the articles for a formality,
So that's due by the 20th.
that's something that I can work with, yeah, I can work with like the town attorney next week, but it's not something where the language,
Yeah, okay.
I can come up with rough language, it's not
Hmm.
impossible,
Yeah.
it's not
Do
difficult.
we need a
No, that's-
dollar figure now for him, or is that something we can put in later?
I think that's something that we will want to put in once we know some of our, or, I mean, we
Can't
can,
you even put that on when you're on the floor?
yeah.
no, you have
Change it?
you have to have a specific number,
We have to change it in writing.
Hmm.
yeah.
But long as it's done before they write the articles to be read,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
you
which
know,
is, yeah,
so you don't have to do it weeks before.
right, because,
If you're already gonna do it, I would wait,
Yeah,
right.
just get it done.
But I know that like the final number is going to change a little bit, as I mentioned, we're still
Right.
having
Sure it is.
contracts to negotiate. And so whether, I mean, whether the contracts are officially negotiated or not, there will probably be a buffer built into the
Yeah.
accounts that, if there's some question
yeah.
going forward, but I wouldn't recommend to do what you see on the page right now as the capital stabilization fund.
No, but the point is, we have one, whatever we have for money, we'll put it in, and we'll worry about what happens the next year.
Yeah.
At least we'll get it started.
Yeah,
And, yeah,
That sounds good.
fund it and spend it, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And get these departments the equipment and the pieces they need,
Yeah,
you know, hopefully without having interest. I mean,
Yeah, bonding them.
I hate seeing interest charges and things. You know, I have a problem with that in my personal life too. I mean,
Yeah, agreed,
Alright.
agreed.
and then, on the 27th, will you have the booklet done? So we can, or just a draft even, so we can vote on,
Yep.
some of the articles and.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think that would.
And get our recommendations in then,
Yeah.
so they'll be in there for the public hearing.
Yep. Definitely.
Then we'll be all set.
yeah, sounds good.
Does anybody have any more questions? Eric's over there writing away.
You're gonna be tested on this.
I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to understand.
That's right. Good.
I'm still a little lost on what this was. We got this,
Yeah.
we,
That's what took me so long to get everything out last night, is because Claire really liked that sheet, so I was trying to make everything kosher within that sheet. But there's formulas that are off, there's accounts that shouldn't be in formulas that are in the formula,
so I should ignore this one.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah. it
Don't
was-
put that under your pillow.
Yeah. And also it was going off of, like, when Heather changed accounts last year and nestled things in certain accounts that, yeah, so there's a lot of work that needed to be done on
Okay.
that worksheet. That made me lose sleep, but don't want anybody else to lose sleep over it.
Okay, if somebody wants to make a motion, unless somebody's got something else they want.
I make a motion, we adjourn for the evening?
And I'll second.
Aye.
And we'll be ready to finalize everything next Thursday.
Next Thursday's today.